Live. Why is it showing me this? There we go.
Oh.
There we go. Hello, and welcome to Ask the Right Questions. This is the show where two grown men yell into their mic for around an hour.
I guess that's one way to describe it.
This is your boy Slim Jim, and that's Race.
What's up?
He's not feeling it today.
Not exactly, no. But we're going to do it regardless because we have a huge audience waiting for
But he has Smash Brothers,
That's true.
so his life changed.
How are you liking Smash Brothers?
It's a lot better than Smash 4, that's for sure.
Did Sakurai satisfy you, or do you still hate him?
I never really hated him in the first place, but it's not as good as 64 Melee or Project M. But it's,
Should we talk about how we skipped the last 3 weeks because of unforeseen circumstances?
well,
Do people care?
there
No.
was Thanksgiving, then I had violent diarrhea, and then you wanted to play Smash Brothers.
Well, I got sick as well. So we couldn't do it afterwards, after we got Smash Brothers.
That's true.
The usual December stress.
Is that a real thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't
The
know
holidays the holidays suck.
that. Oh, it doesn't bother me.
The holidays are supposed to be great.
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't bother me because my family doesn't do anything.
Hmm.
We just get days off.
Yeah.
But
I
today's
guess
question
work is stressful during December, and then it gets really cold, and then everyone gets sick.
well,
It's just horrible.
that's because you work in a warehouse, so there's lots of packages.
Yeah, that's true. How do artists find inspiration?
So, am I supposed to
You
say
say
why are we asking the question?
I don't know. I guess you can mention that. I don't.
Well, I'm asking the question because you always
Because
say you
it's
never have inspiration.
we're asking the question because it's the right question,
Yes,
and we always look for right questions to ask.
but it's all. But I can't. I decided to ask the question because you never have inspiration. You say you never have inspiration, and it's your MacGuffin, and you chase after it your entire life. Whereas I always have too much of it, and I can't
All
focus
right.
on one thing.
All right. Well, you say you have to chase that inspiration more than you get sparks of inspiration, and I say you have to wait for it more than chase it. I think both are correct. We're just disagreeing on to which degree should you chase it more or do you have to wait for it? I think, unfortunately, and I've heard a lot of artists say this, that you have to wait for it more than you chase it. So you still have to chase it to some degree, but it doesn't guarantee, it's maybe 60-40 that you're actually going to get an idea that's going to like motivate you enough to actually bring it to fruition, if that makes sense.
Well, oh, this is all going to be from really a personal angle. We'll just say that. So, I'm not going to try and speak for everybody in the world. We'll just put that out there, okay?
But there's a certain psychology.
Yes.
There's like an objective psychology to all artists,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I'm starting off with mine, my personal one.
Okay.
Okay, as for me, I feel inspired if I play a game, watch a movie, anything. I constantly have ideas in my head.
Hmm.
My entire thing is there's projects laying all over the place, both physically and digitally. I never finished
Yeah.
because I always feel inspired when I watch or whatever, whenever I experience something, and that's me. As for you, you told me you never feel inspired.
I don't, most of the time, I do not get ideas that are like, oh, I have to create that right now. I get inspired if I watch something or play something. Like, I'm like, oh, what if I created something like that? Like, that happens. but it's very rare that I get something in my head that's like, I have to make this right now. Now, I don't know if I think most of my problem, if you want to talk about my personal problem to the internet,
That's up to you if
if
you
you want to
want
bring
to.
this out,
That's up to you if you want to do that.
you're trying to surface it. You're trying to get it out of me.
I'm not personally trying to surface it. No,
Okay. All right.
I wanted to have this discussion because we totally disagree on what inspiration is
Yeah,
and how it should be treated.
I think most of my problem is being productive, finding better ways to be productive, and actually bring those things to life. Bring your ideas to life, because that's super hard. I think maybe a better word would be you're influenced by something. But inspiration is like, this is my own idea, at least to me, when I think of an artist being inspired, it's like, this is my own idea and I love it so much, I have to see it become a reality. I think that's what most artists mean when they're talking about inspiration, being inspired.
So what you're saying is for you, it has to be a big deal. It has to
Yes.
be a big pile of stinky poo on your front porch. You can't ignore it. It's
Yes.
too big. It's too big. It's too stinky. You have to go after it right now.
If you want to describe it like that, I guess. Has a big stinky pile of poo, I guess.
You have to go take care of it right now. It's in your face. Can't ignore it. So you've issue with me saying you have to chase it. I think I need to define chasing it. Okay. Should I define
I
chasing it? I don't mean actually running outside your house and trying to be inspired.
well, I forget what it was, but you were like, I forget what I said, but in response, you were like, no, you have to go after it. You have to look for it. You can't just sit around and wait for it.
I mean, if you're not actively doing anything, you can't really be inspired. Though I would argue you could do something with the idea of a protagonist who's so lazy that he doesn't take the call to action, and then the apocalypse comes to him. Right?
Well, I put in my second album,
Yeah.
Hip Hop Be Revelace,
Revelace.
an audience of one on
Audience of one.
Bandcamp,
Yeah.
bandcamp.com.
Revelace.bandcamp.com. You also just go to
Yes.
his website and it probably links to it, I would assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. RacerPosa.com.
Yeah.
I have a song called Hip Hop Be Creative. And there is an interview with MF Doom, the rapper MF Doom. I put a voice clip of him from that interview. And in the same one, he says, actually, Baby Bean put this clip in there, but he said, it's like the wave in one of his songs. He put a clip. He talked about inspiration like a wave. It's like when you're at the beach and you're waiting for the wave to come, then you ride it. That's how he described. It's like you have to be ready for that inspiration when it comes, which to me means he's saying I have to be in a productive, creative mode all the time so that when a spark of inspiration comes, when an idea comes to me, I'm like ready to create it right there and then. So his advice there is to be productive so you're ready for the inspiration to come. And so that's how I've always thought about it. And that's always been my experience, that I can't just sit there and have a blank sheet of paper and wait for an idea to come. It's like I have to have the idea and then I want to start drawing it.
Well, it makes sense to me. I mean, there is a lot of people who are inactive until you
Right.
know until until the big pile is on their doorstep.
But your point is, no, you gotta force yourself to start making stuff, right? Even
Yeah,
if you're not inspired to do anything, you should still force yourself to create something. That's your argument.
yeah. I mean, it keeps you active. It keeps the mind working.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It keeps the mind working. It keeps you active. Let me see. I'm trying to look up the quote I had. Oh, here it is. There is there's a British writer whose name I can't pronounce. William Somerset Maugham. He was Arthur in the early 1900s, first half of 1900s. He would write lots of short stories, plays, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
He was a writer for hire. And he has a quote from him that says, I write only when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. Because he had to write for a job. He had to write to make money.
Oh, okay.
That was the point he's making.
That's a very British quote. Very British.
And it leads into what I'm saying because of all my years of leaving projects behind that wasn't good. Not good, Race.
Well, do you think you can fall out of love with an idea too?
Oh, to some degree, certainly. Like
Do you think that's what happens with us? Because I have a lot of left behind projects as well.
for me, it's either I was inspired by something else and wanted to do it. Nomura, who makes who made Kingdom Hearts.
Yes.
He was the guy working on Final Fantasy 15, and
Yeah,
he's why it was in development hell, because
I
he
know.
kept throwing away everything. Then eventually he watched, I think it was My Fair Lady, and he wanted to turn it into a musical. He wanted to throw everything away, so he went into the offices and they just kicked him off the project when he said that.
That's such a funny
But
story.
it's a good example of my issue. That's an extreme. That's what happened to me too. That's why a
That
lot of my
means that
projects get left behind. Other times it was huge technical problems, and it was just going to be way too much work to get through it all.
that shows how crazy artists are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Artists are crazy people. They're maddening people.
See, so that is my problem in the form of a professional. Well, that same thing is why Kingdom Hearts' story is too hard to follow. Because every game he wanted to write a different story that was just almost unrelated, but he had to force it into it somehow.
Yeah, he's like a victim of his own genius, right?
Yeah,
Because he comes up with amazing results in the actual games, but he just goes overboard. Like his
and
mind is
and
probably so
and
full of
I'm
ideas that
sure if he was able to finish Final Fantasy to what he wanted, it would have been a fantastic game. It looked like it, the
right.
previews. But so that's more my issue. But so with what I'm saying to chase a race, what I'm saying is inspiration is a tiny spark. It's just an idea. Like I'm working on Higher Falls, and it appeared from you and me arguing over whether magic and technology could coexist,
Hmm.
and taking each one to the extreme where magic replaces technology. So
Hmm.
you've seen me evolve the idea, right?
Hmm.
And it all just didn't come to me at once. It wasn't just, like I said, it wasn't 50,000 words at one time.
Right.
I evolved it first. It was I came up with the animal races, and it was going to be flat. Then it turned into this whole ledge thing where people living on the rocky sides of a planet shaped
Right.
like a ledge. But it evolved, race. It evolved. It was just the inspiration was just a tiny piece of it.
Well, it makes me think of my music too, because by the time I was done with my second album and I was working on a third Lyrical Light album before we kind of broke up, the group, I didn't have any more song ideas after that, to be honest. For a new album for myself or a new Lyrical Light album. Um, I'm sure ideas would have popped up, but
If you were focused on it.
yeah, but those first two albums, I had like charted them out with song ideas and beats that Dylan had made. And like after that, I was kind of like, there's going to have to be like some really inspiring music that I hear or some really inspiring hip hop albums that I hear to come up with any more song ideas because I feel like I've said most of what I wanted to say. Um, if I had more ideas for songs, I think I might be more motivated to learn how to produce and start making stuff, you know?
But you did have all kinds of ideas while you're making it because you're focused on it and you were actively trying to
Well,
create music.
yeah, I was focusing on finishing the songs with Baby Bean and just getting it made. I mean, getting made was really hard. Um, but like after that, I didn't have another chart of songs to create, you know? Um, and I've had comic ideas, web comic ideas. I think it's just like implementing them and getting the work out. And then I think I get anxiety over like doing all the work and then getting it out there and it doesn't get noticed. It doesn't make money. And I think that unmotivates me from going about making it. So I think most of my problem is motivation and productivity. But inspiration is, I mean, anything can give you inspiration, anything can give you an idea. I guess one thing that stops me too is being too derivative, like feeling like you're just copying
You worry
instead of
about being
coming up with
similar.
your own remix or your own unique take on something.
That,
You
hap-
you
that happens with me at the beginning of stuff, but then as I keep prodding at it's pretty clear it becomes something totally different.
yeah. I mean, I always remember when I was a kid, like kids would be drawing Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, and every single time I saw them doing that, I'm like, don't you want to draw your own ideas? Don't you want to come up with something else like that you made yourself? And so I never got into like making fan art or making or just drawing things. Like I always drew my own ideas. I always thought that was more valuable. So I think that's like stuck with me. It's like um, if I make something like obviously people are gonna notice that if I make something like Evangelion or Miyazaki, like oh that's inspired by them. Um,
Well,
but I want to make
pretty
I
much
want to work to make it different enough to stand on its own.
well, I guess you could say Ghibli was copying Disney in a lot of ways.
Oh well, Tezuka was
Yeah, and
obviously.
Tezuka as well,
I mean, anime eyes are
but it's not
Bambi
Disney.
eyes.
But it's not Disney.
No, it's not.
Well,
But you
at
could
this
say,
point, it seems like every Japanese feature film that's not based on an existing property is like copying Ghibli. The one you
I
just
guess that's
saw
true.
was a lot like it. I
Yeah,
forget his
Mirai.
name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mirai is a phenomenal movie. Phenomenal.
but it's very
Um,
much like it, right? It's like that
that is, yeah,
Alice in Wonderland kind of thing.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Um,
See, there you go. See, I
I
don't know. I
forgot
don't.
what else I was gonna say.
Well, personally, I'm against copyright anyway, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
against. Should be allowed to do whatever.
No,
But
I mean, I like I'm more. I understand more that everything is a remix, and you need to just accept that some of what you make is going to be derivative. But you know, like what Miyazaki talked about with anime, since we're on Miyazaki, how they were just and Anno said this too that people are just making anime based off other anime. They weren't
yes,
making work that's inspired by real
it
life.
wasn't expired by an external source. It was all inbred.
So being inspired by just regular life, like that's going to give you the best results in art, I feel.
Yeah.
Mirai was based off the director watching his son be jealous of his new baby sister, and he just based the movie around that. And you never really seen a whole movie based off that idea, um, in at least in anime. So it stands on its own based on off a real life experience, and then that makes it relatable to a lot of people who dealt with the same thing. Whereas some shows you can tell like, oh, that person watched.
They copied
Um,
something else. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I mean they watched Evangelion or they watched.
there's plenty of shonen manga you can read, and it's like it's Dragon Ball Z with a different
Yeah,
skin.
right, right. Or and a lot of slice of life is anime is very similar.
Yeah. Well, a lot of slice of life tends to be really similar
Yeah,
for a reason, because it's so normal.
yeah.
But where was I gonna go? Oh, so do you so do you feel that inspiration is a spark race, or do you think it blows up instantly into this thing, to the whole complete product?
Not a whole complete product. For some people, I guess for some artists that could be the case.
There's times that have. I mean, there's times I just barf up a character onto the page, personality and all. But it,
Well, there's times,
but a character is not a complete story.
yeah. I
It
mean,
makes the story.
there's times I've gotten ideas from dreams, which is pretty cool. You get a whole kind of story idea from a dream, just a random dream you had.
That happens to me quite a bit.
But yeah, once you start developing it, it's going to evolve. I mean, uh, there's rewrites of scripts while a movie's being made all the time. There has to be reshoots of certain scenes.
Well, yeah, to
Um,
turn, well, I mean, almost all art is similar to a sculpture where you have to keep tweaking it.
mhm. um, Going to talk about my Kubrick obsession, but he was making The Shining. The script was changing every day, and they had to color code which script was which, so they knew what to read from, what to memorize from. Um, and he also made he was like doing symbolic stuff in his work, and so he had to keep us like try to keep those meanings a secret from the crew and the actors. Um, and so he even had to think about that, like what am I going to tell them and what am I not going to tell them to get the result that I want. And he would do like take after take after take and use use the results that the actors didn't even expect him to use. Like the more outrageous take he would use in the movie than the one they wanted.
Yeah,
In Doctor Strangelove, it was a movie about the Cold War and nuclear tactics between Russia and the US. And the actors took it very seriously, but he asked for takes where they were kind of outrageous and silly about it. And it ended up being, I mean, he made it basically like a black comedy,
yeah,
very dark. Um, but the actors were taking it like, this is a serious subject matter. How can you joke about this? But he somehow got them to do these crazy takes, and then he used that in the movie. Uh, so
well, he was a perfectionist, right?
yes, he
Well,
was.
I think that's a problem that both of us share. I'm always having perfectionists,
The-
but I'm just forcing myself to put it out there now, whatever gets made.
well, that I guess that's a whole nother subject too. But like, but his results are incredible.
Yes.
Like people, I mean, just one movie of his is a world within itself, and so much you can study
You're about this,
about just one of his movies.
now imagine all the perfectionists who never publish, because they're perfectionists and it's never perfect.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, but then again, it's like some directors. have made like 30 movies. He only made 13.
Yes.
And the early ones aren't even that complex. They're not even really that good. He was still just learning.
Well, the ones you hear about are the ones who managed to publish something. I'm just saying, most perfectionists aren't going to be publishing anything because they just can't get it out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that's the reason JonTron went 12 months without a video.
yeah. Well, it's quality over quantity.
No,
That's
well, he always was, but I mean, everybody was happy with his once a month or so publishing. But at some point,
mhm.
it's a problem, a major problem, because you can't post anything.
Well, if you can afford to live off one video a year, then
Well, his old videos still get views because they're very rewatchable.
mhm.
But he has that catalog that he did publish at the beginning.
That's true.
But at some point,
Um,
it won't work anymore, obviously.
so that's a whole debate about
Perfectionism.
one.
We're gonna have to have self therapy show about that.
Yeah.
Well, we should have a
Well,
series called self therapy race.
mm, maybe.
We have therapy on the internet.
Maybe once in a while. That's a whole debate about quality over quantity, and um, I forgot what I was going to say. Crap.
Well, I guess we're getting a little off inspiration anyway, but it's all linked, really.
Yeah, I mean, Kubrick spent 2 years working on the preparation for a Holocaust movie,
Yeah, and he didn't do it. I know.
and he didn't do
He
it.
didn't do it.
Um, but he also spent many years working on a Napoleon movie to the point where he charted out every single day of Napoleon's life on index
Did he
cards.
have a diary?
He
Is that
he
how?
had a box he had a box of index cards
No, I mean,
with
Napoleon.
I don't know.
Did he have
I
like a pile of diaries surviving? Did he to do that?
I don't know how Kubrick did it. I don't maybe possibly. I don't
Yeah.
know how he managed to do this. He wrote a screenplay, he couldn't get it made, but he did so much research and had so much information on the 18th century that he was able to make Barry Lyndon, which just takes place in the same era. And that's actually a more interesting story than Napoleon, I think. Uh, so research, inspirate, like the research and trying to be inspired, that's part of the artistic process.
Research is important, but it's also delay.
Yes.
It's major delay
So that's one.
tactic.
So that's one debate we have, right? Is that, oh, I got to go get inspired,
Well,
but it can also
at this
be
point,
an excuse to not create.
at this point, I'm saying if you're not creating, you're making excuses. That's all. It's one or the other.
You're very militant about that.
Yeah, I am. Even though I'm also a failure, but I'm self-aware and I'm trying to help others not suffer from that.
but but the research and watching things and doing things to get inspiration, that's just part of it. That's like an unavoidable thing, right? That's part of chasing inspiration.
A little bit, but after you get the inspiration, you have to start. You have to start knocking away at it.
Hmm.
I mean, sitting down and watching 14 movies is just an excuse.
But that's how an artist can get inspired.
I don't think you need if you watch a movie and you feel nothing. If you watch a movie and you play games and you go outside and all that and you just feel nothing, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you're in the wrong business. I mean, if you don't feel inspiration, then I don't know. You're in the wrong business, dude.
But you can tell when but you can tell when an idea is forced or too derivative, and the artist just wasn't trying that hard that day.
Well,
Like you can
yes.
tell when an artist cuts corners, and he just had to make something that day.
Yeah, well,
Like
not everything could be a masterpiece.
so, but that can be wasted work. I'm afraid of that. I guess that's one thing that stops me a
It's
lot.
part of
Like,
perfectionism.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
Ralph
you've
Bashki.
been watching movies for 27 years of your life, almost 28, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think you've had plenty of inspiration, plenty
Yeah,
of material.
I know. There's always something new to learn from films, though. I
I'm
haven't
not
been
arguing with
watching.
that too. Like I was writing my story, and I had to research arrow wounds because you got hit with an arrow, and I found a really great article, and I read it, and I forced myself to keep moving along now. I mean, I could have started looking into all the parts of the human leg and figured out exactly which nerve it hit, but that's not needed.
No, no. I'm not saying you go overboard. Um, but I guess like talking about Ralph Bashki, you're more on his side of this, right?
Yeah,
Like,
he talks about how if he was alive nowadays, he would he'd be in a garage with three other people just cranking out animation.
right.
He was talking about
Now,
that.
now here's the thing. Very inspiring artist. I like when I listened to some of his interviews where he talked about just like do the work, get this done, let's just get it together. He's like a producer as well as a very
All
creative,
his work is extremely
provocative artist.
creative, though. I mean,
It
I remember him complaining about the pecker checkers in his office, all trying to force him to do stuff.
it's all unique and creative. Some of it's really low quality though.
But his latest one with all the newspaper backgrounds, it's a total visual blowjob. I mean, it's a bit of a mess, but it is one of a kind, and I actually really like it. I
But
do. I
is
really
yeah,
like
but
it.
the animation is like super janky.
It is, but that's part of the charm to me in that
It's
case.
super
I'm not
janky
saying
and
it's amazing,
uncleaned.
but I don't know. It's actually really hard to see the characters sometimes. It's so busy with those backgrounds. But man, is it cool looking? I love it though. I love it as an abstract work of art. I love it.
I mean, I appreciate what he does completely. I mean, I've listened. I'm always like fascinated by his interviews. He talked about it's not about the result of the work; it's about the process and what you learn from the process. And I've just never that's never connected with me. Like I want to believe that. I know it's true to some degree, but like at the end of the day, the art is left. When you die, you leave your art behind. You leave your result.
Well,
And
personally, that's why I like to watch movies in such an order because I get to watch the artist evolve.
right, okay, but I'm saying like he. Do you think the process is more important or the result is more important?
Um, well, what do you mean exactly? Like, I mean, you have to start publishing at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's people online putting out scribbles and people love it. Look, what's that XKCD? The dude draws stick figures and mumbles on about pop science and makes a living with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of web comics online. I'm not sure all of them are
Oh,
making money, but people like them.
I
They
remembered what I
aren't
was
all
going to
making
say.
money.
Limitations bringing innovation,
Yeah.
quality over quantity. That's a whole nother show we could do. But
Well, yeah.
I understand those things, but I just have the perfectionist thing in me where it's like I more value the quality over quantity. I more value make trying to make a masterpiece than just trying to get something out.
Well, I do too. I mean, I do too. I have to force myself to do what I'm doing now. Publishing the stuff that just obviously not perfect to me,
Hmm.
and it's not an easy thing for me to do because of that. I mean,
Because I mean,
so
just to
so
talk about
so to answer your earlier question, what's more important, the process or the end result. I mean, the process is extremely important for you to develop as an artist.
Hmm.
I mean, well, you could tell when somebody's heart isn't in it, but you also can tell when a product is low quality, but their heart was in it. I've said for a long time that a lot of times I will appreciate something that is bad over something that's mediocre, because when something's mediocre, it's usually because it's uninspired and it's just generic. You know what I mean? Like it was spat out to try and profit on something else similar that's big at the time.
But how can you tell the difference between that and something that's rushed?
Um, because something that's rushed usually has glimpses of something good in it, like Final Fantasy 15.
But wasn't that them? Wasn't that the artists forcing themselves to be productive and just get it done and get it in by the deadline?
Well, if you're working in a corporation, I can't really
But
blame the
even
artist for
but
that
imagine
usually.
imagine it's like self-imposed, because you could even say you're self-imposing deadlines on yourself to be more productive, but that be maybe rushing it and making the quality suffer.
I mean, deadlines are important in a certain way too, because you need to get it done and move on with your life too. But like that quote that somebody said Miyamoto said. I don't know if it's true, but he probably didn't after I looked at it. But a delayed game is better than a game that was rushed. But
Because the game's going to be out forever.
but if we're going back to Final Fantasy 15, I mean, I can see why they threw him out. I guess, right?
Well, yeah. I
I can
mean,
see.
that's well, because he went overboard. I mean, there's a you have an artist always has to be aware of the physical
Yes,
limitations and the
yeah.
financial limitations.
I mean, there is a
Uh,
there is a balance to it all too. I mean, in a certain way. Um,
mhm.
but
I mean, I guess the answer is they're both the process and the result are both important. I just think the result is a little more important,
I mean,
and you got to be smart about
can somebody
how you
that
use
has
your limitations.
can somebody that has never actually made a product make a masterpiece? Not really, right? They can't. It's
Yeah,
incredibly unlikely, unless they just happen to shit ice cream. I
that's
mean,
true.
I mean, the opening act usually doesn't do it.
Well, I mean, I remember um, Kubrick's wife said that he always wished could have made more movies. He got near the end of his life and he's like, I've only made 13 films. I really wish I could make more. But then Jack Nicholson said, you know, uh, Kubrick is the only one who really makes movies. Everyone else is just cutting corners. And when you look at his legacy, he has like 10, 11 like films that are just like studied and analyzed and talked about like no other films are studied, analyzed, and talked about. Um, and sure, you wish you could have more from him, but like there's so much in his films. You watch one Kubrick movie and you have so much to study and look into. And to me, if I want to be remembered, when I want to be remembered as an artist who has works that you can really like dive into and really study and appreciate. So I understand that can keep you from getting the workout and it can make you unreasonable and make you mad, but it might be worth striving for in the end. Because there's like I just watched Raw Bagger's analysis of a movie called The Abyss that James Cameron made, and that movie, like visually and technically, is like a superhuman feat for like it's like the mid '80s, and it looks like a movie. It looks better than most '90s movies. It's like underwater, like in a rig. I think it's called like an underwater rig, and they have submarines and stuff like that. And it's just like visually stunning because it's people actually underwater. It's amazing looking practical effects for its time period, and it's even got good early CG. And it's just like visually amazing, but the story's rushed, the characters are rushed, the ending's not very good. There's all kinds of problems with it. That if he had more time, he maybe could have fixed and ironed out, and then it would be a real masterpiece. I mean, John Carpenter had a delay in the filming of The Thing, and so he had more time to think about the story, and so he hid extra stuff in the script that made it more complex, and so now it's considered pretty much his best movie. Because it's just so like there's so much going on in it. So, and Miyazaki, of course, Princess Mononoke, you could consider his real masterpiece because he like checked every single frame of that movie and made sure it's perfect. Where later come to The Wind Rises, probably just as good as a movie. He couldn't check every frame and fix it all. And there's moments in the movie where he says he can't even look at it because he doesn't like the animation.
Well, every artist sees the flaws.
Yeah. Yeah, but so I guess I mean there's a lot of questions that this one leads to. Like it's a big subject to talk about with artists and their psychology and how they actually get stuff done. And it's been our main struggle in our life, I guess. So it's also very personal. So there's a lot to get into with the subject, but like
Well,
how do artists
for
get
me,
inspired?
well, for me, I'm not James Cameron, and I'm not Kubrick. At this point, I have to get something made and published if you want to have
Right.
any hope of living off of it. So that means being productive.
Yeah.
I realized that from
But
reading those old the old pulp magazines where people had to write. I mean, they were on a deadline. They had to write these stories, these short stories, weekly or monthly. Monthly was the best time they had, and I really enjoy reading them all. I mean, I don't think everything in the world has to be a true masterpiece to be for me to enjoy it. And I don't know. I'm not looking to make some deep philosophical thing anyway. I'm looking to make something fun and entertaining.
okay.
Oh, you're looking to make a movie that is going to change everybody's mind, shake
When
the world.
I should really just focus on getting something out, even if it's not like the masterpiece that I want it to be.
I don't know. It's like, I mean, are you able to enjoy a movie that's not a masterpiece?
Yeah.
Well, well, I mean, you also know me. I read those pulp novels, which saying a pulp novel nowadays is an insult. But I enjoy them all. I also
Uh-huh.
watch those old those old monster movies that you hate.
Well, I don't hate them, but I mean, I don't find them super entertaining, I guess. Um, Cowboy Bebop is very pulp, but it also gets very philosophical. It exceeds on both levels, so I would consider it a masterpiece. Uh, I think Kurosawa's movies are deep and philosophical and psychological, but they're also super, super entertaining and engaging. So I guess when you do both, that's makes a really good work of art, a really good film.
I mean, you could ask what your goal is too. I mean, what is your goal? If your goal, there's different goals. I mean, are you looking to fill a niche that's not filled, or I mean, if you're looking to make something that is super complex, it obviously takes more time.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the same as if you want to sit down and make a portrait, or if you want to make a more abstract landscape scene. I mean, detail takes time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's one conversation that John Lennon had with Bob Dylan, where Bob Dylan said, I mean, John Lennon said, you know, your lyrics are great, but you never experiment with music. And Bob Dylan said, well, you experiment with music, but you don't really say anything with your songs.
Yeah.
And so after that, Bob Dylan went to electric guitar and got all the folk music people mad. And then soon after, the Beatles made Sgt. Pepper.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of lost with the question now. Going, I got into productivity. How do you get inspired? You look at other pieces of art and you try to mix them, remix them, come up with your own ideas. You can be inspired by that. I think there's an element to inspiration that's always going to be mysterious. You don't know when a wave of inspiration or an idea is going to hit you. Sometimes you have to wait for it. Sometimes it's going to be so inspiring and be so overwhelming that you have to get it out and create it. Being productive in a deadline, it's not always going to make that happen. And I think a lot of artists have struggled with that.
Well, do you feel that sometimes the goals are too lofty?
They can be, yeah.
Like in
But if you're not trying to go for lofty goals, then your art's not always going to be mediocre, right?
I don't really think that's true myself. I mean, something can be entertaining, something can be fun.
I mean, unless you have a natural talent for always coming up with unique ideas and unique art, I think you always got to keep pushing yourself as an artist to like and never be satisfied. If you're too satisfied and you're too safe just to hit a deadline, you're not going to have an amazing body of work by the end of your life.
Well, I mean, you have to define. I don't know. I mean, you kind of have to define it all. I mean, I mean, you have to work within your means to some degree because we're just two assholes in our bedrooms. We don't have a team of people to to roll around cameras and do in betweens and all that. To
What are you talking about? I have a research assistant and everything.
Yeah, exactly, that's my point. I mean, you certainly can make a complex story. Like, well, as for me, let's talk. I can talk about my personal. I started writing because I can't do animation.
Hmm.
I mean, well, I can't do any animation that will satisfy me. You and me are picky assholes about animation.
Yes.
We want quality animation.
Thanks, John Kay.
We're not going to be settled for for Rocky and Bullwinkle animation. We're not
For
going to
cutout, yeah, for paper cutout puppets.
basically that's the absolute best we could do.
Mhm.
Sitting in our rooms. So I mean, I started writing because I don't fear writing. I mean, you know, even to make a comic, to cover a sentence in a story takes two pages of a comic probably to show people a sentence, a scene. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I can take a page or two of a comic, but I can type it out. You know, and I'm going to do illustrations on the side. You know, that's what I'm talking about, working in your means, finding a way to make what you want.
Right.
Plus, I also am a weirdo and really enjoy world building, and that's why I enjoyed the Star Wars prequels, because that's all they were in the end, is world building.
Right. I mean, thinking about Evangelion, the ending for that was
What was him working in his means, because he had nothing left. He had nothing left.
they were yeah, by the end of the show, the production schedule was seriously limiting, and he brought innovation out of that limitation. However, once it made a lot of money, and once they got more time to think about it and prepare, they made End of Evangelion, which is my favorite movie and one of the most amazing pieces of work I've ever seen, animation or film. And a lot of money and time was put into it, and you got an incredible result. Whereas, okay, the ending to the TV show, wow, unique, creative, innovative, inspiring, cool, but it's nothing compared to
Well,
the
it's
beauty.
not going to be satisfying for most people.
No,
The last
but
episode.
no, and that lack of production is what makes it unsatisfying, whereas End of Evangelion is 10 times more satisfying. And End of Eva actually has the psychological stuff that the ending has too. There's tons of uh, similarities, I guess you could say. There's tons of moments that they share between the two endings. Like it's
Yeah.
two different perspectives on the same event. So I don't know. I guess there's no real.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel that every piece of art has to be deep and complex and
No,
try and change you? Well, that's where we disagree a lot because I end up watching a lot of movies that you enjoy and I'm like, it wasn't very entertaining.
no, but
It was somebody trying to throw their opinion around.
well, every story has some kind of opinion. You can't.
Well, sure, deep inside, but there's a difference between being preachy and it kind of being an extension of who you are. I mean, if you read mine, I mean, you can see my shitty opinions in it,
Well,
but
okay. Well,
I'm trying to make sure it's entertaining first.
let's talk about Angel's Egg. Okay. Now
Yeah.
you refuse to read that analysis of Angel's Egg.
At that moment,
Just like because you're
I didn't feel like wasting my time with
good.
that. No, I
Yes,
was
you
doing something
because
better. I was doing something
yeah,
better.
because you want to be all disciplined, but you also want to be closed-minded, and you don't want to talk about that analysis with me. Okay, I took it personal, but okay.
I didn't. Why do you take it further? I didn't really
Listen,
care about the movie. That's all it was.
you said you judged it only based on its entertainment value.
Yes, because that's why I
I
sit
was
down
trying to
and watch
get
a
you to
movie.
see, but I was trying to get you to see the symbolic value in it because that's what it is.
Well,
It's a
watched
symbolic
it, I knew it was an abstract movie that was trying to say something without saying it.
art. Do you find silent movies entertaining?
Yeah, I do. Of course, I do.
Because they're all visuals.
Oh, well, visual humor is the best.
And what about visual storytelling?
It's important to have visual storytelling too.
It's super hard to do. There's tons of ways to look into a visual story, more than just writing, more than just the author telling you what they mean.
Yes.
A visual moment can have all kinds of
Yeah, I
interpretations
know,
and invoke all kinds of feelings.
but Angel's Egg wasn't entertaining
But
visually either. It wasn't entertaining visually either.
but it has things to say visually.
Yeah, it does.
And those things are extremely interesting and can be entertaining.
Yeah, well,
So
that's fine.
you
It's
could read
entertaining to
about it
you.
and then you
Yes.
could watch it again and you can look at it differently and get entertainment value out of just trying to figure out what the visuals mean.
No, well, I realize you're able to do that. That's not entertaining to me though,
Why is it not entertaining to you?
because I don't
Because
know. It's
it's the
not.
same.
I mean,
It's the same as,
it's like asking how come somebody doesn't like a certain taste.
it requires your brain to do more work than just. I mean, when you're watching a movie, your brain is close to sleeping, and
I don't know for you, I guess. It's not for
no, no,
me.
well, no, that's I think like that's scientifically like it's almost the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Your
Well,
brain.
there's no way I could fall asleep while watching a movie unless it's just a total shit show. Because I'm
Well,
paying attention to it.
I find a lot of people end up falling asleep
A
because
lot of people do, yes.
uh, apparently I don't have like the data in front of me, but your brain has certain wavelengths and states When you're watching a movie, it's the wavelength is super close to you sleeping or being in a dream.
Well,
So,
I'm just saying, I'm always so engaged by it that I can't. That I'm like, I'm always stimulated while watching
well,
it.
that's why TV and film can also be very impressionable
Yeah,
because it like seeps into your subconscious without
yeah.
you realizing it. Um, but one of the things about Angel's Egg is that apparently, uh, Oshii, the director, um, he was going to be a pastor, and he started to doubt Christianity, and he lost his faith. And that whole movie is about him losing his faith. So it's a silent, dark movie about loss with with all this Christian symbolism in it. I think that to me that makes it a super meaningful, interesting,
Well,
creative.
it also makes it very personal to you.
It's yeah, well, yeah, I am a Christian, and yeah, I'm sad that he's losing his faith or whatever, but there's no other movie like that. And I can watch a Marvel movie and be really entertained and be really inspired by it, but and I think Marvel movies like too, they're also very they have serious parts to them and serious things about being a hero and responsibility and all that you can enjoy it on that level too. But even if it's something like purely pulpy, meant to be entertaining, I can enjoy it, but I'm not going to be as inspired by it for something that's striving to be more and say more. So I guess that's more important to me.
Well, I could say this. For years, you're trying to get me to watch movies talking about all the deep shit with Kubrick and all that. But then I went to Cinemassacre and James Rolfe is telling me about cool old monster movies and showing me them. I'm like, I have to go watch them instantly.
Yeah,
It's different taste.
I guess.
What did you guess?
I guess. I don't know. I enjoy
Well, I mean,
art that
for
I
a long
enjoy
time you
art that's
were,
really
right?
challenging me.
Well,
Like
for
I enjoy being challenged. Like
yeah,
I'm able to have the patience with a really slow art house movie. And I'm kind of frustrated when other people don't want to have the same patience or be challenged by it.
I mean, I don't know. As for
So,
art house movies, I liked Dementia a lot, and it actually engaged me enough to go find out what it was saying because it was entertaining to
mhm,
watch. And I don't know, Touch of Evil is an art house movie too, though a popular one.
mhm.
And I went and read about them, and I watched Dial M for Murder, and I instantly started talking about it, right? And I actually did go and find out what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
So you see, if it engages me enough to go look at it, then then to me it's like I actually care. Angel's Egg didn't do that. I just watched it, and it was
I
like,
mean,
meh.
but I'm like
It was
I
like,
but watching it, reading about it made me want to do something really symbolic and made me want to put more thought into what I'm
yeah,
creating.
then go do it. That's a
I
good thing. Go
know.
do it. You enjoyed it, and go do it. Haul ass and get it done.
It's just hard, but like if the symbolism is rushed and not well thought out because I'm forcing myself to be productive, then the result isn't going to be as interesting.
Well, then nothing gets made at all.
I know, but
Well, something's more than nothing.
I suppose. I
If you're not
suppose.
creating, you're making excuses.
But I'm glad an artist suffered and took more time out and spent more money to create an inspiring piece of work that's striving for something greater.
Yeah. Well, he went and made something, and there you go. He went and
Like
made something.
Ghibli, the reason Studio Ghibli is called that is because it's I think it's the German word for wind or the Italian word or French word or something for wind. And They said they wanted to breathe a new wind into the anime industry.
Yeah.
And that's what Ghibli has done. And they make tons of money on those movies, and they don't even make their money back because they make them such high quality. And I mean, they even start him before Miyazaki finishes the storyboard.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So
I do respect all this. I'm just saying not all of it's to my taste. That's all I'm saying.
but I'm just we're
Yeah,
talking
it's important.
objectively about
Look, the Angel's Egg Man had a problem, and he went and made a piece of art about it. Right? He went and he made something in the first place.
uh-huh.
He was productive. He was a productive sufferer. He was suffering. He was tormented. He was tortured, and he was productive while doing it. Now, those are the people who truly love art. I think is the ones who are suffering and still make art no
Yes.
matter what.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I mean, it was also part of the 80s boom in Japan, the economic boom, and investors were more willing to put money into crazy stuff like that, including Akira,
Yeah,
which is like unlimited budget movie,
yeah, yeah.
and it shows.
In,
And
in,
there's nothing else like
infinite in betweens.
there's nothing that moves like Akira.
No
There's nothing with the same level of
budget.
detail and color. And now he hasn't created a lot in his career though,
No, we haven't.
the creator, but he's made the most influential anime movie maybe ever, and one of the most high quality animation movies of all time. Is that better than 30 anime movies? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. It depends on what those 30 movies are.
I suppose.
You can't know what those are. I mean, you can't know what those are. So some artists pump out product like crazy, and some don't.
I guess it depends on the artist and the circumstance. So I don't know. This is a huge subject. I don't. Have we gotten anywhere
Have we
in
gotten
this
anywhere?
hour?
Well, it was something. It was something for you and me to debate. Was the main
Mm-hmm.
thing. Well, I can say Jimi Hendrix only made 3 official albums, but he has a shit ton of recordings, as I know, because I have them all. And just his home and studio sessions are at least what's been put out through bootlegs and official releases. There's 59 albums worth, and some of them are tons and tons of stuff on them.
Well, but he has a lot of covers too, right?
On those home and studio sessions, not really. No, he wrote a ton of music, but he was such a perfectionist, he only ended up putting out 3 albums that he actually approved to get released by a
Oh,
studio in his
okay.
life.
Okay.
And that's why his bandmates used to fight with him too, because they would sit there, spend a week trying to record one song, because it was never perfect enough for him.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know, but he's also
Well,
remembered. He's also remembered.
I mean, who else sounds like Jimi Hendrix? Nobody, really.
Nobody really, no. But you also can talk about, but there's famous artists who put out a lot of stuff too. Bill Watterson put out what? It was like a decade's worth at least of Calvin and Hobbes comics every day,
Yeah.
and he's very remembered. I mean, there's different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So I guess we can wrap it up now, Race.
I mean, it turned into a whole nother subject, I guess.
Well, being productive is the source of me asking the question.
It's probably the biggest part of answering it, I guess. Maybe it should have been a different question. I think in the end, I think we're both right that you have to, if you want to create art, there's plenty of ways to be inspired. At a certain point, you need to make something, and you need
That's what
to
I'm doing.
you need to work at coming up with something to put on the paper, even if you're not like totally satisfied with it. At other times, you're gonna have to wait for a wave of inspiration to hit you. Sometimes it'll come out of nowhere, sometimes it'll come in a dream. You can't decide when it happens. It's just gonna happen.
I'm put.
And
Yeah.
you can't, there's no like, I don't think there's like a militant attitude you could have of you have to go after an idea and chase after. I think sometimes a wave is just going to hit and you have no control over that.
Yeah.
As an artist, you just have no control over the inspiration hitting, but you can chase after being inspired and something might happen. So I think the answer is how do artists get inspired? Both ways, but what's more important? I guess that's still an open debate. Like,
Well, there's
I guess that's my
extremes.
summary.
Yeah. Well, there's extremes. There's people like me who constantly feel inspired. I have to push away tons of other shit. Every time I watch something to do something, I have to push away that idea because I have to focus on what I am doing right now,
Uh-huh.
and I have to focus on this one thing because that's why I have all the endless projects laying around. And then there's people like you who inspiration strikes once a year.
Well, I'm not like Stephen King. That's for sure. Like, I'm not always coming up with stories to tell and
That
ideas.
that that's me. Like while I'm writing this one story, I've written I have outlined in at least a general way a bunch of others
Yeah, it just
because they
doesn't
appeared
happen a
before
lot.
me. Because they appeared
It
before me.
just it happened more when I was a kid, but but a lot of the ideas I came up with a kid, I now realize were very derivative and just copies, and I wouldn't want to make them now because they're just too much like those other things. But I guess I was more productive drawing.
I say,
But I was just making like clones of Banjo Kazooie in games I was playing, and I mean, I wasn't really.
when you start your personal stream, you're gonna be like that other guy who every every day at midnight you're gonna have to be inspired, right?
I'm gonna be
Every day at
inspired
midnight.
making art. I guess it's
Yeah.
some more ambitious stuff that has a more ambitious like story, which is what I actually want to strive towards.
All right.
I only have a few of those over my lifetime. I don't have an idea every month like Stephen King seems to have, where he just writes book after book after book.
Or me, I'm forcing myself to focus on one thing so I can get that one story done.
I mean, that's what he said, is that
No,
when he
I
was a
realize, yeah,
kid,
it's him too. Yeah,
he just had story after idea coming into his head, and he had to write it down.
it's how it is for some people, and I have tons of shit outlined I never finished, or
Hmm.
characters and all that stuff. Just remnants of a story I was trying to make.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll wrap it up now since we're over an hour anyway.
Hmm.
All right. So it went a different direction, but it still was a debate.
An interesting conversation. Yes. Yep.
All right. So we'll see you all next week. But TTFN, Tata for now.
See ya.